Welcome to KeepItReal Studios, the only channel on YouTube that keeps it real.
The UFC has multiple weight divisions, and it's full of countless megastars, amazing fighters, and just one of the best champions we've ever seen currently in the UFC. And of all of those divisions, one division truly stands out as the best, and that would be the lightweight division. When it comes to the lightweight division, it's just chock full of megastars, amazing fighters, amazing champions, and overall just murderers row. If we're looking at the top 5, top 10, even top 15, each fighter is very unique and they're very dangerous and they're just world-class martial artists. And in today's video, I'm just going to be going over each single fighter in the division and just kind of talking about their strengths, their weaknesses, and what makes them such a unique attribute to the lightweight division. Starting in the number 13th position, we have Benoit Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis was actually a very solid fighter and it was actually up and coming in the lightweight division. He had multiple fight win streaks and he had finished all of his opponents. Relatively, he did go up against Dustin Poirier and that did kind of derail him. Then eventually, he had a match up against Moicano and that derailed him even further. I would say Benoit Saint-Denis is still a very solid contender in the lightweight division. He has proved that he's not top level yet, but I still believe he has a lot of potential. And I'm just kind of waiting for him to come back on his next fight. Then we can kind of see what happens next with Saint-Denis. Moving on to number 12, we have Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. So Paddy Pimblett is actually a huge question mark right now in the lightweight division. Because starting off, he's relatively having a matchup coming up at UFC 314 up against Iron Michael Chandler, number 7th ranked in the lightweight division. And this is actually a very unique matchup because this is definitely Paddy's true test in the UFC. I feel like relatively, a lot of people were saying Bobby Green was a true test to him, and he submitted him like in the first round. So putting up against somebody like Michael Chandler, who's actually been champion in other combat sports, who has been in the murderer's row in the top 5 division. So it'll be very interesting to see what Paddy Pimblett can do up against Michael Chandler. And this is actually a very interesting fight. Michael Chandler's experience, power, speed should come in handy, but relatively, you can't deny Paddy the Baddy's hunger, jiu-jitsu, and just the younger talent that he is. Moving on to rank 11, we have Rafael Fiziev. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting because Fiziev just returned back from an injury up against Justin Gaethje, and man, it was an amazing fight. These fighters were going back and forth, the fight of the night. These two boys are always delivering. It was such a close fight, but I feel like when it comes to just having a war, Justin Gaethje has his number. I feel like Justin Gaethje's chin held up tremendously in the fight. Fiziev did a lot better. He was using his wrestling more, taking down Justin Gaethje from time to time, but Justin Gaethje just proved to be a lot better mixed martial artist in the end. And Fiziev has mentioned that he's going to move down to featherweight division. Relatively, I still feel like he has a lot to do in the lightweight division. I feel like a matchup between him and Chandler or him and Hooker would be very exciting. But I do see him going down to featherweight, and I do think that could be a good class for him. Relatively, depending on how well the weight cut goes for him. And I feel like a very good starting up opponent to see if he belongs there will be Josh Emmett. Moving on to the number 10th position, we have Moicano. And this is where it gets real interesting because Moicano is actually a very high level fighter. He has a lot of amazing wins. His last performance he did lose, but that was up against the champion himself, Islam Makhachev, and that was on short notice. But shout out to him, man. You know, he did step up on short notice and he was going from a fight between Beneil Dariush. So this is where it actually gets interesting. Number 10 position is Moicano and the number 9 position is Beneil Dariush. So I actually do believe that this is actually a very amazing matchup for both fighters because Beneil Dariush is coming off 2 back-to-back knockouts from Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. So I feel like him and Beneil Dariush should actually go up against each other. This would be a very interesting matchup to see in the lightweight division. Moving on, in the number 8th position, we have Mateusz Gamrot. This is how confusing the rankings are because Gamrot is probably one of the most top-level elite fighters in the lightweight division currently. Dustin Poirier trains with this guy and he says Gamrot beats him up all the time. He's a very unique fighter. To me, he's kind of like the wild card and a question mark because a lot of people forget Gamrot has a win over Arman Tsarukyan, and Arman Tsarukyan is the number 1 contender right now. So if Arman Tsarukyan ends up facing Islam and somehow beats Islam, there's a chance Gamrot could get a rematch and win the championship. So I feel like Gamrot is kind of a question mark too. And don't forget, man, Gamrot also has a loss to Beneil Dariush. So if Beneil Dariush is able to get past Moicano, he can maybe face Gamrot again. This is what I mean. The lightweight division is very interesting and very confusing, especially just with the rankings, because it seems like on any given day, these fighters can beat each other. Number 7th position. This is where I feel like the rankings just kind of lose its mind. You have Iron Michael Chandler. Don't get me wrong. I'm actually a huge fan of Michael Chandler. I do believe he's one of the most entertaining lightweights on the planet. He has so much power. He's so dominant, but his IQ is just downright horrendous. I feel like his mindset, his motivation, his physique, his power, his attributes would be good to be one of the best fighters in the world. But I feel like, honestly, sometimes I don't even think it's necessarily even IQ. I feel like he just overswings. He's just really rough. I remember in this last matchup with Charles Oliveira, he himself had Charles hurt. Then he swung so hard that he took himself down. Like, how's that even possible, man? Michael Chandler has a lot of attributes, but now he is getting older. That's why I'm really interested in this matchup with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, because if he can't get past Paddy, I think it's time to hit the hay. But Michael Chandler, I don't think he should be ranked number 7th right now, but we'll see in the future at UFC 314 to see if he actually belongs there. Now, moving on to the number 6 position, we have Dan the Hangman Hooker, one of my favorite fighters in the lightweight division currently, man. Dan Hooker is a savage. Whether he wins or loses, this guy prepares for war, and he puts all the top level opponents into like a greedy matchup, makes them look human and makes them look beatable. That's why I love Dan Hooker, man. And this guy's truly a psychopath. The way he trains, just the way he pushes forward, you can hurt him and he'll keep walking you down like he's a zombie. Dan Hooker is probably one of my favorite fighters. I'm truly sad that his hand got injured and he didn't get the fight up against Justin Gaethje. And I truly believe that's the interesting matchup to have. I do believe that matchup between him and Justin Gaethje should definitely happen. Justin Gaethje is trying to look forward for a title shot, but necessarily I don't think he should get a title shot based upon one win against Fiziev, especially on short notice. So relatively, I would like to see him go up against Justin the Highlight Gaethje. Before we get into the top 5 in the lightweight division, there is a man that we do need to talk about, and that is Ilia El Matador Topuria. This guy is an absolute savage, man. The 145 featherweight champion of the world, Ilia Topuria, vacates his belt to move up to the lightweight division because he wants that fight with Islam Makhachev. This is truly crazy because Ilia Topuria is actually such a G, going out here chasing legacy, status, and immortality. Ilia Topuria currently right now is arguably one of the best boxers. He's very well-rounded and he just has the punch of death in his hands, man. This guy can truly knock out almost anyone in the featherweight division, lightweight division, and I even think the welterweight division too as well. Relatively, he's very skilled, very high level, and his mindset and his confidence is probably one of his best attributes in the game today. Ilia Topuria currently does have a win over the number 5 ranked Max Holloway. Ilia Topuria did knock him out, which is truly insane because Max Holloway has never been truly knocked out or even truly dropped. So just to see him do that to an amazing fighter like Holloway blew everybody's mind. But relatively, he's still a very good high-level fighter, and I truly believe he'll be a top 5 contender in the lightweight division. A lot of people are saying he should just go up and have the Islam Makhachev fight. I truly believe that'd be a super mega fight. There have been leaks saying that it might happen, but me personally, I would actually kind of like to see him fight somebody like Charles Oliveira. Because if I'm being honest, I can see Ilia Topuria knocking out Charles Oliveira. I love Charles Oliveira, but I can see him going to sleep in like the 2nd round, just based upon their styles, their frames, and just how each of them chase a finish in a fight. I do believe Ilia Topuria does have the better advantage. And the way I'm seeing it, I feel like, imagine if Ilia Topuria, look at his career. He knocked out Volk. He knocked out Max Holloway. He moves up to the lightweight division, knocks out the former lightweight champion, Charles Oliveira, and let's say he now gets a matchup with Islam Makhachev, and he knocks out Islam too. That would be one of the craziest stories and one of the craziest resumes in UFC history. So that's why I would truly like to see him even go up against somebody like Charles Oliveira before he moves up to Islam. But relatively, I don't even care if they give him the Islam matchup to myself. I'm somebody who's open to the matchup. I'm not even necessarily saying he's going to beat Islam, but it would be an interesting matchup to see. I would even like to see him go up against somebody like Dustin Poirier. That would be such a unique matchup to see for Ilia El Matador Topuria. In the number 5th position, we have Max Bless Holloway. Max Holloway is such a unique and adamant fighter. Tremendous cardio, amazing boxing from his timing, his rhythm, his volume, and just the way he mixes it up to body shots, head shots, and everything else. He has a good implement of using his jab. And a lot of people tend to sleep on his kickboxing too, He does have a good spinning low kick to the body. He has a lot of good low kicks, calf kicks. Max Holloway is a very versatile fighter, and he does have solid takedown defense. I feel like Max Holloway is going to be a true contender in the lightweight division. I don't necessarily see him winning the championship anytime soon, but I do see him having a lot of fun, exciting matchups that he could win. An interesting matchup that a lot of people are saying is going to be rumored is him versus El Diamante himself, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, for the BMF Championship of the World. That would be a unique fight to have because Dustin Poirier has stated that he only wants legends before he leaves the UFC for his last fight. But relatively, I still feel like there's a more exciting matchups to have in the lightweight division for Max Holloway. For example, him versus Charles Oliveira is such a banger. Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira is actually a rematch. A lot of people forget that this fight did happen back in the day, Max Holloway being the victor, but this was around the time where Charles Oliveira was known as a quitter and would just quit mid-match. So relatively seeing them two running back, not necessarily in their prime, but kind of stepping outside of their prime, it will still be a fun, exciting matchup. And I can see this fight being 50-50, If it's on the ground, I do favor Charles Oliveira, but Max Holloway does have good takedown defense. If it's on the feet, I do relatively think Max definitely has the better boxing, but Charles Oliveira at any point, it can hurt you and snipe you down. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see. I feel like relatively Max Holloway's next opponent should either be Charles Oliveira or Dustin the Diamond Poirier. In the number 4th position, we have Mr. Shine Bright Like a Diamond himself, El Diamante, Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Dustin Poirier is arguably one of the best lightweights we've ever seen in history. His resume speaks for himself. A lot of people like to call Justin Gaethje your fighter's favorite fighter or the most violent lightweight on the planet, but I truly believe that goes to Dustin Poirier. If you look at his resume, if you look at just his insane fights and matchups that he has, and if you just look at how other UFC stars and fighters talk about him, you'll truly see that Dustin Poirier is your favorite fighter's favorite fighter and just the most violent lightweight on the planet. Dustin Poirier is a tremendous boxer, gritty, strong, perfect timing, insane power, a solid chin, and overall, still very solid jiu-jitsu. We do see him get submitted and tapped out from time to time, but I feel like those are just top-notch, better fighters in the ground than him. But relatively, he's still a very solid fighter. Put him up against anybody in the lightweight division, I believe on any given night, he can either beat them or give them a run for their money. El Diamante is such a solid and strong fighter. It's truly sad to see him go because he's planning to have his final matchup in the UFC. Like I was saying in the Max Holloway fight, a lot of people are saying that's rumored to happen. That would be a good fight to see him go out. Personally, I would like to see him and Justin Gaethje kind of duke it out for the last time because, they're both 1-1. But Justin Gaethje on numerous times has said that he doesn't really need that fight. He's okay with them being 1-1. I would like to see them close the chapter off, but relatively it doesn't really do anything for both of their careers. I do understand Justin Gaethje's perspective, but I feel like Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway is a good way to go out. And Max Holloway is the current BMF champion of the world. If Dustin Poirier is able to beat Max Holloway for the 3rd time, he can walk up in the sunsets knowing he's one of the most badass mother effers in the game today. So when it comes to Justin Gaethje, this is where it kind of gets interesting in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje is just coming off a recent win up against Rafael Fiziev at UFC 313. It was a tremendous showcase, and he did show to still be one of the greatest contenders in the lightweight division. Now he is pushing and advertising for a title shot up against Islam Makhachev. But relatively, I think he does not deserve it, and it makes no sense for him currently. I truly believe if he goes up against a fighter like Islam, he will get choked out. It would be sad to see. Justin Gaethje is a very exciting fighter, very violent, very brutal, and very technical at times too. A lot of people tend to forget that he's a very high-level technical fighter because he's such a brawler and he's very aggressive. He has amazing wrestling. You take him down, you see him scramble all over the place. Justin Gaethje is a very solid fighter, and if you're not on your P's and Q's, he can put you out at any time. Relatively, Justin Gaethje stated himself, he's won 3 out of his last 4 fights, and the only loss comes from an exhibition matchup up against Max Holloway. Relatively, I understand what he's saying, but I think he just used the wrong choice of words calling it an exhibition matchup, because it wasn't really an exhibition matchup. It was for the BMF championship. I do understand. You know, Justin Gaethje didn't have to say yes to that fight. If Justin Gaethje didn't say yes to that fight, we wouldn't have gotten Max Holloway versus Topuria. And Topuria wouldn't even be moving up. We wouldn't have gotten the greatest knockout in UFC history. So we do have to kind of give credits to Justin Gaethje for kind of putting like his belt on the line, his title shot on the line, just for our entertainment. I do understand that, but man, Justin Gaethje has had 2 title shots already, and he already kind of lost to them. And relatively, if you're looking at fighters like Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira only got 1 title shot and he became the champion. His second title shot, I know he did hurt himself, but relatively, you know, how can you blame the guy? So he himself, the former champion, hasn't even got his own title shot. And Arman Tsarukyan, the number 1 contender, hasn't even gotten his own title shot too as well. So I don't really see how that makes sense of Justin Gaethje just kind of skipping those guys and getting an instant title shot. But I truly believe that he should go have that matchup against Dan Hooker, because relatively, I do believe that's a very good fight that could happen. Moving on to the number 2 position, we have Charles "The Bronx" Oliveira, the former lightweight champion himself. Charles Oliveira is truly one of the most impactful fighters in the lightweight division. Just looking at his career throughout the UFC and just how he is to this day, Charles Oliveira is a very amazing fighter. Amazing on the feet, knockout power, excellent jiu-jitsu, excellent takedown, beautiful grappling. Charles Oliveira is probably one of the best lightweights on the planet to this day. However, I don't believe he should go up against Islam Makhachev yet. I don't believe he deserves number 1 title shot. Because if you look at his last performance, it was up against Iron Michael Chandler. Don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful performance. He basically outclassed Michael Chandler for 4 rounds except for the last round. And that was due to Michael Chandler just cheating the whole fight. But you gotta remember, Michael Chandler was coming off a 2-year layoff and managed to go 5 rounds with Charles Oliveira. That does not speak really volumes for Charles in that position. Don't get me wrong, Charles Oliveira is still amazing, very versatile, very strong, but I do not think he should go up against and fight somebody like Islam Makhachev yet. I truly believe that he's not ready. I feel like some possible matchups for Charles Oliveira currently could either be him versus Max Holloway, him versus Topuria, or him versus Arman Tsarukyan. I truly believe that's the true matchup to make. I've been stating that him versus Arman Tsarukyan should have a rematch, 5 rounds, and whoever wins should be the number 1 contender for the championship. So relatively, I do believe Charles Oliveira should either fight somebody like Max Holloway, Topuria, or Arman Tsarukyan. And I truly believe that would be a good matchup for him to see if he's ready for the lightweight championship again. The true number 1 contender in the lightweight division is Arman Tsarukyan. And it is unfortunate that he kind of screwed himself over, you know, just hurting his back last minute. Relatively, a lot of people saying that he just didn't make weight and that was an excuse, or he was just doing foolishness before the fight. But whether it was true or not, Arman Tsarukyan, I believe as of right now, he does need to get back in the good graces of the UFC. I truly believe he's number 1 contender, and I truly believe if someone's going to dethrone Islam, most likely it's him. So I feel like he should get a title shot, but relatively, since the situation and fiasco he did pull, he might need to have his title shot back. So relatively, it's either running it back with Charles Oliveira, maybe even going up against a fighter like Justin Gaethje, since Justin Gaethje just wants to get a title shot after beating Fiziev off a 2-week notice, or maybe even fighting somebody like Topuria who wants to come up. So relatively, I believe that Arman Tsarukyan just needs to prove to the UFC, not to even the fans, just to prove to the UFC that he is deserving of that shot, that he is a company man, and that he is willing to kind of make it to the title shots contenders. Last but not least, we have the champion himself, the number 1 pound for pound in the world, the greatest lightweight on the planet Earth currently, Islam Makhachev. And this guy is an absolute dog. He's well-rounded. Jiu-jitsu, sambo, grappling, striking, kickboxing, anything you name it, Islam Makhachev is perfect at it. Islam Makhachev is currently one of the best fighters we've ever seen in UFC history. He has a good mindset. His trash talking is hilarious. He always goes in there and has amazing matchups. For a fighter who's so technical, so precise, and so immensely good in the octagon. He just puts on dog performances, man, every time he steps into that octagon. And one of my favorite things about Islam Makhachev currently is he doesn't care who it is. He just talks about, if anyone can make weight, come and get this belt off me if you can. That's why I believe Islam Makhachev is probably one of my favorite champions currently, man. This guy is a dog. His mentality is so strong. And overall, he just wants all the smoke with anybody and everybody. Look at his last matchups. Submitted Marcano. Submitted Poirier. Knocked out Volkanovski. Submitted Charles Oliveira. Man, this guy is probably one of the best and craziest and strongest fighters we've ever seen in the UFC to this date. Islam Makhachev is truly the #1 pound per pound. For me personally, I think this guy should just go up and fight Belal. Who cares if they're friends, bro? Go chase your legacy, go get your double championship and bounce. Me, I'm not even a big fan of double champions, but for somebody like Islam Makhachev, if someone who deserves to move up and get that belt, it's Islam. Who cares if Belal is your best friend, bro? I don't care. You shouldn't even care either, man. It's not like it's a beep. Go up, get that championship of Belal. But relatively, in regards to going to focus on the lightweight division currently, I'm not going to lie. I love that Ilia Topuria matchup. I know it doesn't really make sense that I do believe Ilia Topuria should fight somebody like Charles or Arman, or maybe even Poirier or Gaethje before he moves up into fighting Makhachev, but relatively, if they skipped it, it would still be an exciting matchup. I don't care if he's a 45er. I still think he's probably one of the best to even beat Islam, just his power and just his confidence. And these two are very confident fighters. They're both world champions. Their build-up will be insane. They're very kind of cocky, smirky fighters. So I think it will be an excellent build-up. So the Topuria match is possible. And I believe even the Arman Tsarukyan, I feel like Arman Tsarukyan is still one of the best fighters to be able to beat Islam Makhachev on paper. I feel like relatively it would be a very good matchup for Makhachev. And honestly, the Justin Gaethje fight, it kind of intrigues me. Put Islam up against anybody would be a very fun match. But if I'm being honest, the only 3 fights that really make sense to me for Islam Makhachev currently right now would be him moving up to fight Belal, him fighting Ilia Topuria, him fighting Arman Tsarukyan. And if they want to do it, I don't mind the Charles Oliveira rematch. I don't think Charles Oliveira is currently ready, but I don't really mind that too as well. So relatively, that's what I feel like is next for Islam Makhachev and just the lightweight division as a whole. In conclusion, the lightweight division is currently on fire right now. Each fighter in the division is just unique and very top level contenders in the division. I truly believe that the top 5 to the top 10 fighters are all champions in their own respectives. They're such high level competitors, strong mindsets, and so versatile in each attribute in mixed martial arts. I love the lightweight division. It's always been my favorite division. It's just chock full of megastars, amazing fighters, and just the clash of their styles. Anytime you mix and match any fighter in the division, it's always exciting. From the lower ranked fighters to the higher ranked fighters, the lightweight division will always be one of my favorite divisions. And that's why I kind of wanted to make the video on today, just talking about each fighter and what's next for them coming up in the UFC in the future. But overall, that'll be it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell me some of your opinions and your thoughts on the lightweight division. How do you feel about it? What are some fun, exciting matchups you would like to see? What are some matchups you don't want to see? But overall, that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. And don't forget to keep it real.